Alright guys, so in our last video we looked at part-whole and how we can use that as a strategy to build that equation to then figure out how to solve that problem. Today we're going to look at an extension of that, which we kind of talked about a little bit at the end, but looking at part-whole and what that looks like in a word problem. So we can use part-whole to solve multiplication and division problems. So we're going to try and solve this one and see how we would use that. So the question reads, there are 4 bracelets on the counter. All 4 of them have 2 gold beads on them. How many gold beads are on all the bracelets? Go ahead and pause the video and write an answer sentence. So I hope that your answer sentence really paid attention to that question portion of our word problem, which reads how many gold beads are on all the bracelets. Probably going to write something like there are blank gold beads on all the bracelets, or some version of that. So we know that we're counting gold beads. Go ahead and draw your bar model with me, and we'll start with the whole. Now we're looking for the total number of gold beads. Does it tell me the total number of gold beads? No, it tells me how many is on each of the bracelets, but I don't know the total number of all the gold beads. So I'm going to put a question mark down there. Now we are going to look at what we know in terms of where these gold beads are. So I know I have 4 bracelets, and each of these bracelets have some gold beads. So I'm going to separate my bar into 4 sections, and that's going to represent each bracelet. And then each bracelet has 2 gold beads. So I'm going to go ahead and put 2's in each of my boxes to show that each bracelet had those 2 gold beads. And now I'm going to use the same part-whole model that I did in our last video, but I just have more parts. So for this, it's going to be, instead of 2 plus 2 equals whole, 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, because I have 4 parts, equals my whole. Now, we recognize that when I add the same number over and over and over again, it's basically skip counting, which we know a shortcut for, which is called multiplication. So to make this a multiplication equation, I'm going to count the number of groups that I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, or if I'm counting the number of groups in my boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 4 groups of 2 equals whole. So when I'm doing part-whole with multiplication, instead of doing all my parts, I'm going to shorten it to be how many groups of that part I have to give me the whole. And then you can solve this as 4 times 2, which gives you a total of 8. So there are a total of 8 gold beads on the bracelets. Make sure you fill in your answer sentence. Alright, so again, we're going to look at what part-whole looks like for multiplication and then division. So I just told you that multiplication can look a couple of different ways. If it looks like this, we know that is basically repeated addition. As long as all those parts are the same number, if it's 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, that's repeated addition, in which case we can use the shortcut of multiplication 4. If all those parts are different, like 4 plus 6 plus 4 plus 2, I cannot multiply that because it's not equal groups. So as long as my parts are all the same, I can take the shortcut known as multiplication. When I'm rewriting it, I typically write it as part times part equals whole. This is not quite true, but it works a little bit. This first one, because I'm doing multiplication, really shows us the number of groups. So we know that multiplication shows groups of, so when I'm doing multiplication, instead of saying if these were all 2's, 2 times 2, it would really be 4 groups, because that's the number of groups, 4 groups of 2. So it doesn't quite work as smoothly, but I think most of you got a good handle on that. Now, when we're doing division, it's going to look very similar to if we were doing subtraction, because the same starting point is going to be the same. When you are dividing something, just like when you're subtracting something, you want to start with all the things. You can't start with just a part and then divide out. You have to start with everything. So when I'm doing a division problem using part, part, whole, I'm going to start with the whole. So I got to start with all of it. And then I'm going to divide into parts and get whatever parts are in each group. So again, I'm having to do number of groups, and that really could be either part. Just like in multiplication, because multiplication and division deal with groups of numbers instead of individual numbers. However, the formula is still going to look very similar to what we've seen with addition and subtraction. Just know that with multiplication and division, you are using groups of numbers instead of individual numbers. So let's go ahead and try some of it. Question reads, there are 18 pencils to be shared between 2 students. How many pencils will each student receive? Let's go ahead and pause the video and write an answer sentence. So I hope you looked very closely at that question portion of our word problem. It says how many pencils will each student receive? So we are counting pencils. You probably have a sentence something like there are, each student will receive blank pencils, or some version of that. So we know we're counting pencils. We're going to go ahead and draw our bar model. And then I'm going to label my whole, because I know that my whole is going to be the entire bar put together. So, reading my problem again, looking for the total number of pencils, because that's what I'm counting. I see there are 18 pencils. So that would be my total. Put that down with my whole. And then I'm sharing it between 2 students. So again, I'm dividing up my bar to show those 2 students. Student 1 on the left, student 2 on the right. And then from here, you could just go ahead and start doing your dealing out, but the equation that you're going to be doing is very likely division, because we know our whole. And when you know your whole, it's a good idea to start with division, because it is in that front spot. So because I know my whole is 18, I'm going to go ahead and fill that in, divided by how many groups am I dividing this into? Well, I'm dividing it into 2 groups to get my part or my box or my mystery number or whatever. From here, a lot of you guys know to deal out. However, just like with addition and subtraction, this is not the only way we can set up this problem. It's just the way that I would set it up. We can look at it as a multiplication problem. So one of my parts is 2, or 2 groups of something equals 18. Both of these problems will solve for the same missing number. They just do it in a slightly different way. So whatever's easier for you, if you like to divide out, or if you like to just know your multiplication facts, that'll work. By now, you probably have figured it out. Go ahead and fill in your answer sentence. Alright, that's going to be it for today, so go ahead and continue on your learning path.